This happened about a year ago. I was 32 and working as a mission specialist in astrobiology. It was my dream job, studying extraterrestrial environments. The mission was set for 6 months, orbiting Uranus, looking for signs of life. Our station was high-tech, buzzing with machines. I thought I was ready for anything, but something felt off from the start. I still can't shake it. At first, everything seemed fine. We set up our lab and began experiments. I noticed some strange things happening with the data streams from the atmosphere. They seemed glitchy, but my colleagues shrugged it off. "It's just the equipment," they said. "It happens in space." I felt a chill. Maybe they were right, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong. Days passed, and odd changes began to settle in. One morning, I found the main console flickering. The readings were going wild. I called my friend Leo to check it out. He just shrugged and dismissed my worries. It felt like the station was playing tricks on me. I was starting to think there was more to this than simple equipment failure. Strange noises crept through the station. I would hear echoes, like whispers bouncing off walls, when I was alone in the observation deck. My heart raced every time. It had to be the machines, right? I didn't know. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. Then the atmosphere shifted. Tension filled the air like smoke. Conversations turned sharp and strained. I watched as Sarah, the engineer, fixated on a wall, lost in her thoughts. I felt like I was watching them spiral into confusion. I reached out to Leo again, but he seemed distant, almost scared. His eyes darted around as if he was expecting something to pop out at him. The breaking point came one night. I heard footsteps. I woke up and caught the noise echoing in the corridor. I froze, grabbed my flashlight, and opened the door. The hallway was dark and empty. I felt a cold blast of air rush past me. Was I imagining things? That dread gnawed at my insides. Weeks passed, and it only got worse. Crew members started taking medication to cope. It felt like we were slowly losing our grip on reality. I did what I could, collecting samples and running tests, but my mind raced with fears. What was happening to us? I started recording my thoughts, unsure of how it would end. One late shift, I sensed something dark in the lab. The machine stopped humming for a brief moment, and everything fell silent. That's when I heard it. A whisper, calling my name. Was it real? I turned around, breathless. "Is someone there?" I called out, but the silence pressed back like a thick blanket. No one answered. Something in that station knew my name, and I felt all the warmth drain from my body. I stood frozen, aware that whatever we were facing was not human.
Anymore. The station had changed us. I could hardly recognize my crewmates, lost in madness. The unease I had felt from the start now rushed to the surface, and it terrified me. I don't know what's left of us, or what's watching our every move. The following day, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. I spent hours in the lab, trying to focus on my experiments, but the whisper echoed in my mind. Get a grip, I told myself. I needed to gather evidence, something to convince the others that we weren't imagining this. I decided to inspect the main console again. As I walked back, the station felt different, a shift in the air. It was heavier, more oppressive. The lights flickered above me, and I could swear I saw shadows dance along the walls. I paused, listening. The silence was deafening. When I reached the console, I noticed a new log file. I hadn't seen it before. My hands trembled as I clicked on it. The screen filled with data I didn't recognize. It showed anomalous readings, fluctuations that didn't match anything we had recorded before. I leaned closer, trying to make sense of it all. Then a voice broke the silence. "What are you doing?" The familiar tone belonged to Leo. I jumped, spinning around. He looked pale, his eyes wide with fear. "You shouldn't be looking at that," he said, his words sharp. "Why not? This data could explain everything, I replied, feeling defiant. You've seen the changes too. Leo shook his head, panic evident in his expression. Just leave it. It's better not to know. A chill ran down my spine. Why was he so desperate to avoid the truth? Before I could ask him more, the lights flickered again, this time going out completely. Darkness swallowed the room, and I felt my heart race. I fumbled for my flashlight, hitting the button frantically until it flickered to life, a weak beam cutting through the black. Stay close, I whispered to Leo. The shadows around us seemed to shift, narrowing and stretching. I felt a presence lurking, cold and unyielding. Can you feel that? I asked. Yeah, I can feel it, but we have to go back, he insisted, pulling at my arm. Forget the console. No way. First, we figure this out. I resisted, stepping back towards the flickering screen. Just then, the whisper returned, clearer and more insistent this time. Get out. My breath caught in my throat, and I grabbed Leo's arm. Did you hear that? He nodded, terror in his eyes. We shouldn't be here. Before I could respond, the station shuddered violently, shaking us both. The console erupted with sparks, illuminating the darkness momentarily, revealing shadows that seemed to flicker and twist in unnatural ways. I dropped my flashlight, heart racing. That's when I saw it. A figure, barely visible, standing just beyond the feeble light, its eyes reflecting something inhuman. My instincts screamed at me to run. Leo!
He was already bolting toward the door. We ran, our breaths rapid, the figure following close behind us. The weight of whatever that was pressed in, and I felt an urgency I couldn't explain. As we dashed down the corridor, I realized we had awakened something we shouldn't have, something that didn't want us to discover the truth. The whispers grew louder, drowning out everything else. And then, just before I reached the airlock, the lights went out again, plunging us into darkness once more. I grabbed Leo's arm, our breaths quickening in the suffocating dark. I fumbled for the flashlight, my fingers stumbling over the cold metallic surface before finding the switch. Light flickered back on, illuminating a narrow strip of corridor. We didn't stop to think. We sprinted toward the airlock, every sound amplified in my ears. My heart thudded in time with our footsteps, echoing off the walls. I glanced back, half expecting to see the figure. Nothing, but the whisper was there, curling around us like smoke. Get out. The airlock was just ahead, but something tugged at my mind. The console had shown data anomalies. I was certain there was a connection. I struggled to pull my thoughts together as we neared the door. "Leo, we can't leave yet!" I shouted. He was already at the airlock, fingers dancing over the controls. "We have to warn the others." "Are you insane?" he retorted, barely glancing back. "They'll—" The lights blinked again. This time they dimmed, threatening to fade out completely. With a jolt, the airlock hissed and the door slid open. A rush of cold air washed over us, but I saw something in the back of my mind. A pattern in the data, a formula I hadn't had time to process. "Wait!" I yelled, grabbing Leo's arm. He jerked away, eyes wide. "What if the data is a warning?" "Right now, that's not our biggest problem," he shouted back. He slung himself into the airlock, and I hesitated, torn between what I saw and the urgency of escape. Then the figure emerged again, stepping from the shadows. It was closer this time, and I felt the icy grip of fear tighten around my throat. The voice, it was stronger, more defined. "Get out," it commanded, a perverse echo of our earlier fright. I stepped backward, my breath quickening. "Leo!" He stared at the figure, fear freezing his movements. The shadow loomed larger, rippling as if it were crafted from the darkness itself. I knew it wasn't just a figment of my imagination anymore. "We need to go," I shouted again. Finally, Leo shook himself free from his stupor. "Right, move!" We retreated into the airlock, adrenaline propelling us. The door closed with a hiss, sealing the shadow outside. We were safe, at least for now. "Did you see that?" Leo gasped, his voice trembling. "Yeah, I saw it." I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. "That's not all. There were readings, unexplainable ones." "What are you talking about?" His eyes darted around, not meeting mine. "The console, it showed something. We can't just ignore it." Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and the airlock alarm started blaring. "Emergency! Emergency! We need to go!" Leo grabbed the control panel, trying to override the alarm. "We're trapped!" As the lights pulsed, the whispers surged back, louder than ever. "Get out!" But now it was more than just a voice. It was a command. I felt ice slither down my spine. It was clear. The station wasn't just trying to warn us, it was trying to reject us. With Leo still fumbling with the controls and the airlock growing heavier around us, I knew we didn't have much time. "Find a way to the main deck," I shouted, pushing him toward the emergency hatch. If we didn't discover what the station was hiding, we might never find the way out. But before we could move, something rattled against the door, a sickening thud. The whispers pierced my mind again, wrapping around my sanity. I was running out of time. I could hear it. The shadows were coming for us. The alarms blared like a relentless storm, drowning out my thoughts. I shot a glance at Leo, whose face was pale, lit only by the flickering lights. "We can't stay here," I shouted over the noise. "Let me try this." He slammed his palm against the control panel again, his fingers racing over the buttons, desperately trying to find a way to silence the alarm. "It's not working. We're stuck." But the panicked atmosphere only fueled my determination. I scanned the airlock, looking for anything that could help us escape this nightmare. As I peered around, the whispers turned to a shrill chorus, echoing off every surface. "Get out! Get out!" "Leo!" I grabbed his shoulder, shaking him to break his focus. "We need to find the main deck. Whatever's happening, it's connected to this station." Finally, he looked at me with a confused expression, the tension in his brow telling me he understood. "Okay, but how do we even get out of this airlock?" Then I saw it. The emergency hatch. I pointed to it. "There, we can use that." He turned, his eyes lighting up. "Right, let's do it." As we hurried to the hatch, the thud sounded again against the airlock door. This time it felt different, more urgent, more vicious. I felt a chill sweep over me as I remembered the figure, its commanding voice still echoing in my mind. "Go, now!" Leo urged, pulling the hatch open. Cold metal met my palm, sending a shiver up my arm. I stepped through, with Leo close behind. The corridor was darker than I expected. My flashlight barely pierced the thick shadows. "Stay close," I whispered. Every footfall echoed, growing heavier in the oppressive silence. As we moved deeper into the station, I felt a strange energy in the air. It was charged like a storm, looming just out of sight. "What were those readings exactly?" Leo asked, struggling to catch his breath. "I don't know," I admitted, "but it felt like something unnatural. The fluctuations, they didn't make any sense. We could be at the center of something." My skin crawled at the thought. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind us. We turned, hearts racing, but there was nothing there, just darkness. "We need to keep moving." I felt the urge to run, but my mind urged caution. Leo nodded, his tension palpable. We hurried down the corridor until we reached a junction. I stopped, staring at the flickering control panel nearby. My eyes widened as I saw it, the same data anomalies I'd noticed before. "Wait," I said, rushing to the panel. I tapped the screen, hoping to access the data I had seen earlier. But the screen flickered wildly, refusing to cooperate. "Damn it!" Leo shifted nervously. "We don't have time for this.
Whatever that thing is, it's still out there. I was about to argue when the lights dimmed again. This time, they didn't just flicker, they went out completely, plunging us into darkness. I fumbled for the flashlight, but it was gone. Panic gripped me. "Leo, can you—" I heard Leo's breath catch, and then he whispered, "Something's here." Everything went cold. The oppressive darkness was no longer just empty space. We were no longer alone. That's when I felt it, a presence right behind me, palpable and heavy. My heart raced as I spun around, instinctually raising my hands, but I couldn't see it. "Leo!" I shouted, my voice a mere whisper under the weight of fear. Then came the voice again, deeper, more menacing than before. "Get out." And that's when everything exploded in chaos. I stumbled backward, colliding with the cold wall of the corridor. "Leo, we need to move!" My voice shook, barely cutting through the disorienting fear. But before he could respond, a deafening crash echoed from down the hallway. I could feel the vibrations beneath my feet. It wasn't just an echo. It felt like something powerful was moving, closing in on us. "We can't stay in the dark," Leo insisted, his voice breaking as he fought to hide his panic. "Just follow me." I nodded, my instincts kicking in despite the terror curling in my stomach. Leo took the lead, his hands stretched out in front of him as if he could sense an unseen danger. I was right on his heels, listening hard for any more sounds. The darkness felt alive, pressing us from all sides. Every step added to my dread, the atmosphere thickening with each passing moment. I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching us, lurking in the corners of this haunted station. "Leo, do you think we're the only ones here?" I whispered, my throat tight. "What do you mean?" he replied, though I could hear the tremor in his voice. "Everything changed after the anomaly. Are there other crews aboard?" He hesitated, clearly piecing the implications together. "I don't know. Do you really think—" "I don't want to find out," I interrupted. My feet picked up pace, and I tugged on his arm. "Let's just get to the main deck." We rounded another corner, still looking for any sign of light or hope. Just then, a faint hum came from a doorway on our right. I stopped, uncertain. "Did you hear that?" "Yeah, it sounds like power," Leo said, squinting into the shadowy entryway. After a moment's hesitation, we exchanged a look. Curiosity battled with fear. Without another word, we stepped into the doorway. Inside, the room was dimly lit by emergency lights. Screens flickered, displaying static like a broken signal. But one monitor caught my attention. A series of readings, graphs spiking wildly. This is it," I said, rushing over. "Maybe we can find out what's happening." I scanned the numbers while Leo stood watch at the door, glancing nervously into the corridor. The readings were chaotic, fluctuating more aggressively than anything I had seen before. "Leo, look at this. The anomaly is peaking here." I pointed at the graph, my heart racing. "If we don't stop it, it could lead to—" Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out once more. The systems shut down, and the emergency lights went dark. A heavy silence enveloped the room. "Leo?" I said, my voice trembling. "I'm here," he replied, but I could hear the raw edge of panic creeping in. Then came the laughter, a low, sinister sound. It echoed off the walls, sending chills racing down my spine. I turned, but in my frantic search for the source, I collided into a solid form. Someone, or something, was standing right behind me. I barely caught the outline through the dark, but the shape felt enormous, as if it pulsed with dread. "Run!" I yelled, shoving past Leo. The door was just a few steps away. As we sprinted down the hall, the laughter rang out again, louder this time. My heart thundered as I hoped we weren't heading deeper into the nightmare. We had to make it out. My breaths were quick and sharp, and just as we reached the junction, I felt the figure, an icy hand gripping my shoulder.
I spun around, ready to confront whatever it was. But when I turned, nothing was there. The corridor stretched endlessly before us, engulfing us in darkness once again. "Leo, what's happening?" I began to whisper, but the fear twisted my voice. And before he could reply, a light flickered to life ahead. But it wasn't just any light. It was bright red, pulsing ominously. "Follow me," I urged, racing toward it, completely filled with dread, yet driven by an instinct I couldn't shake. That light felt like both salvation and doom, and I realized we might be heading straight toward the origin of the chaos. The red light pulsed, casting eerie shadows that danced along the corridor. I could feel its heat on my skin, drawing me closer against my better judgment. "We shouldn't get too close," I warned, but my feet didn't listen. They moved with a will of their own. Leo hesitated beside me, his eyes wide. "What if it's a trap?" he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I could see he was torn between instinct and caution. But as the laughter echoed once more, growing louder, it pushed me forward. "We don't have a choice," I insisted, scanning the area for any exit. I needed to get answers, and this light felt like the only way to start that process. We reached the doorway, which was partially ajar, swinging slightly with a soft creak. Inside, the room was more intense, machines whirring softly, screens illuminating chaotic data streams. But what struck me was the central console, where several cables twisted and turned into a large circular device at the back. It was unlike anything I'd seen before, a dark orb glimmering as if it contained a storm within. My heart raced. "This must be connected to the anomaly," I said, inching closer to the console. "If we can just analyze the readings, maybe we can reverse whatever's happening." Leo was still standing at the threshold, his expression a mixture of fear and fascination. "It feels wrong, doesn't it? Like we're not supposed to be here." "That's just it," I said, frustration bubbling up. "If we don't figure it out, who knows what else might happen? We might already be too late." As I reached for the controls, the screens around us flared to life, displaying cryptic symbols and numbers spiraling out of control. I tapped a button, hoping to stabilize the data flow. Instead, the lights flickered again. Out of nowhere, an alarm blared. Red lights flashed wildly, and the air grew thick with urgency. "What did I do?" I gasped, pulling my hand back as if I'd been burned. But before I could analyze my mistake, a deafening roar erupted from behind us, shaking the walls. Leo and I exchanged panicked glances. "Get back to the corridor!" I shouted, urgency surging through me. We turned to flee, but a gust of wind swirled past us, a force that felt tangible and chilling. Something was moving, shifting the air like a predator on the hunt. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw shadows beginning to converge within the room. "Leo!" I yelled, and we sprinted for the doorway. But just as we reached it, the door slammed shut, trapping us inside. The frenzied alarms echoed against the walls, and the laughter returned, surrounding us like a chorus of demons. "No! No!" I banged on the cold metal, desperation filling my voice. "This isn't happening!" Out of the corner of my eye, the orb flickered, pulses of energy bouncing off its surface. "We have to destroy that thing!" I shouted. But Leo's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. What if it's our only way out? Before I could answer, the shadows moved closer, emerging into forms I couldn't comprehend. It felt like they were alive, breathing, and hungry. "We're running out of time," I said, heart racing. "We need to make a choice." As the shadows surrounded us, the orb pulsed again, brighter this time, and I took a step back. I couldn't shake the feeling that its power wasn't just a threat, it was our last hope. And in that moment, I realized, when the mystery of the anomaly was unraveled, the truth might be far worse than we had anticipated. The shadows closed in around us, twisting and writhing, their forms becoming sharper, clearer.
Panic clawed at my throat. I could hardly breathe as I caught sight of faces, twisted and contorted, emerging within the gloom. "What are they?" I whispered, fear tightening my voice. "I don't know," Leo replied, his eyes darting around frantically, "but I don't want to find out." As the laughter echoed again, I felt a surge of defiance. "We're not going to let them take us," I shouted, desperately gripping the console. My fingers fumbled over the buttons, seeking anything that might help. The screens displayed jagged lines and waves of color that seemed to pulse in sync with the orb. I pressed down harder on a large red button, ignoring Leo's warning shout. Suddenly, a bright beam shot from the orb, illuminating the room in blinding white light. I squinted, shielding my arm with my arm. The shadows recoiled, howling as the light tore through them, making their forms flicker and distort. "Keep it up," Leo yelled, his voice trembling but determined. "Whatever you're doing is working." But the light wasn't driving them away. It was drawing them in, merging with the energy of the orb. I felt a pull, an uncomfortable weight, like the air around us was alive and trying to smother us. Somewhere in my mind, a warning bell rang. This wasn't just about escaping. We were digging deeper into something we didn't understand. Without thinking, I twisted the dial next to the button, desperately trying to adjust the beam's intensity. But then, everything dimmed abruptly, and I was plunged into darkness. "Adjust the frequency," Leo said urgently, panic creeping into his tone. "We need to reverse this." I felt around for the controls, fingers searching the smooth console surface. The shadows surged forward again, lingering just out of reach. "I can't see anything," I shouted, my heart racing. "Focus on the orb," Leo's voice cut through the chaos. "You know it's connected to all of this." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to center my thoughts. The orb was powering the anomalies. If I could just harness its energy instead of fighting against it, maybe we could manipulate it. I reached out tentatively, daring to touch the surface of the console. The moment my fingertips made contact, a surge of electricity shot through me. The screens flickered back on, brighter than before, and I
could see the shadows coiling and flickering at the edges. Lines of data zipped across the monitors, revealing connections I hadn't noticed before, patterns, frequencies, and numbers I couldn't comprehend. "Look!" I yelled, my fear momentarily replaced by hope. "It's showing us how to stabilize it." Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled, the room rattling as if the very fabric of reality was breaking apart. The orb's light splintered into 1,000 shards, illuminating a path behind the shadows. I pointed. "There! We have to get through!" With a burst of adrenaline, I shoved aside the fears clawing at my chest and sprinted toward the swirling light. But as we reached it, the shadows lunged forward, their laughter growing deafening. Then everything went dark. There was a sharp crack, the kind that reverberated through my very bones. I felt the world shift, everything spinning, and, just as quickly as it had started, it stopped. I blinked. When my vision cleared, I was no longer in the room. I stood in a vast field of stars, cosmic energy swirling around me like a storm. And at the center stood the orb, pulsating with a light that now felt ominous. "Where are we?" Leo breathed beside me, his voice barely a whisper. "Something's wrong," I said, dread pooling in my stomach. "We've crossed into another realm, and whatever we just unleashed might be worse than we imagined." As the laughter echoed again, this time it was accompanied by whispers, dark and insidious, promising secrets I wasn't prepared to hear. The stars stretched endlessly around us, their light pulsing with strange patterns. It felt like we were floating in an eternal void, both exhilarating and terrifying. I turned to Leo, who was wide-eyed, his expression a mix of wonder and fear. "What do we do now?" he asked, glancing nervously at the swirling energy nearby. I focused on the orb, now hovering above the ground. Its glow was unnaturally bright, radiating an energy I could feel resonate in my bones. "We need to get control of it," I said, trying to steady my shaking hands. "Maybe we can use its power to return home." "But how?" Leo furrowed his brow, looking for answers. "It looks different, like it's become something else." I nodded, my heart pounding louder than the echoes of laughter that lingered in the distance. "We'll have to access the data. There has to be something in there that can help us." I stepped forward, eyes locked on the orb. The closer I got, the more the whispers surrounded me. They were unintelligible at first, just a collection of sounds, but then they began to form words, calling out to me in a twisted tone. "Join us. Embrace the secret. Unleash your true potential." "Focus, Anna!" Leo shouted, snapping me out of the trance. I stumbled back, shaking my head. What was that? "I don't know, but it felt inviting," I admitted, feeling a chill creep up my spine. "We can't let ourselves get lost in whatever this is." I reached for the orb again, determination pushing away the unsettling feeling in my gut. The screens on the console flickered back to life, displaying an array of alien symbols and lines. They began to align, revealing a pattern. If I read it correctly, I could help channel the energy. "Look!" I pointed at the screen. "It's like a command interface. We can program it." "But to do what?" Leo asked, uncertainty still clinging to his voice. The laughter crescendoed again, mocking our efforts. "To tether this energy," I replied, my mind racing. "If we can stabilize it, we might be able to trigger a portal back." As we engaged with the controls, I felt the energy surrounding us pulse stronger. The faint glow from the orb started to grow, barreling toward us. I backpedaled, panic hitting me anew. The shadows were converging, becoming more tangible. "Get behind me!" I shouted, pushing Leo away. The moment I activated the command, an explosion of energy erupted around us. The orb's light blinded me, pushing away the shadows momentarily. I felt a rush, a strange bond forming between me and the cosmic energy. I could hear the whispers again, now pleading, "Don't turn back." But I couldn't afford to lose hope. "Help me!" I cried out, fingers flying over the controls as the energy swirled ferociously. The screens vibrated as if responding. Then, out of the chaos, a figure emerged from the shadows. A silhouette looming, formed of darkness. I couldn't grasp what it was, but the laughter intensified and the atmosphere thickened with malevolence. "Who dares to challenge the shadows?" it boomed, voice echoing through the void. My breath caught in my throat. "We do!" I shouted back, though doubt began to creep in again. The figure took a step forward, the shadows swirling like a storm in response. That's when I noticed something strange. A weapon glowing at the figure's side. It was a long, curved blade radiating a dark energy. "Leo, stay close," I warned. Each second felt heavy with the promise of danger. But just as I turned back to the console, I heard the whispers growing louder, shaping into full sentences, each word dripping with malice. "Your light belongs to us." I had no idea what would happen next, but one thing was clear. We were irrevocably caught in a battle between light and dark. The shadows weren't finished with us yet. The darkness around us rippled, and instinct took over. I shouted at Leo to stick to the back as I focused on the console. The figure was pressing forward, its glowing blade poised to strike. My heart raced as the shadows twisted, forming tendrils that snaked around my legs. "Leo, we have to stabilize that energy!" I yelled, but his face was pale with fright. I couldn't let the fear show. This was our only chance. The orb pulsed again, brightening as if it sensed the danger. "Come on!" I begged, twisting knobs and pushing buttons. The holographic symbols danced chaotically, but I recognized a few.
Directions? Coordinates? I felt a connection forming, a glimmer of understanding in the chaos. "Maybe we can redirect the energy at it," Leo exclaimed, suddenly finding his voice. Courage replaced his fear as he stepped closer to me. "Right, if we can channel it into a beam," I said, eyes darting across the controls. "But we have to be precise, otherwise we could just overload it." The silhouette paused, a chilling moment of silence overwhelming the air as its curiosity peaked. "You think you can harness the shadows?" it taunted. The laughter was back, worse than before. It coiled around us, suffocating. I could feel the shadows tightening around me. "We're out of time," I yelled. "Now or never." I pressed a final sequence on the console. The orb erupted with a violent energy, brightening everything. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as the light washed over me. I didn't know if I had made the right choice. In an instant, a beam of light shot out from the orb toward the figure. It was a moment of raw, pure energy, a desperate attempt to push back the darkness. The figure howled, shadows dissipating in its wake. "You cannot escape your fate," it screamed. But something in its tone shifted. Was it more fearful than threatening now? The beam struck true, hitting the figure directly in the chest. To my disbelief, it staggered backward, dark energy flickering around it like fireflies. It dropped the curved blade, and as it hit the ground, the laughter ceased. The shadows began to retract, pulling away from us. My heart raced. Had we really done it? But just as things began to calm, the orb flickered ominously. The energy surged wildly, vibrating like a drum, out of control. "No, not now!" I cried. "Anna, it's going to explode!" Leo shouted, grabbing my arm, his eyes wide with panic. "Help me!" I shouted back, but the orb was already pulsating with intensity, colors flashing across its surface. Then, everything went dark. For a split second, I felt weightless, like I was suspended in an infinite void. When the darkness lifted, I gasped at what I saw. We were no longer in the same place. The stars were gone. Instead, we were surrounded by swirling colors, an endless vortex opening beneath us. "What just happened?" Leo exclaimed, looking around in sheer disbelief. I couldn't shake off the strange feeling creeping into my mind. "I don't know, but this isn't over." All around us, echoes of the whispers resumed, fragmented snippets. "You cannot hide. We will find you." My stomach dropped. There was more to this journey than just the orb. We'd awakened something, and now it was determined to finish what it had started. The swirling vortex pulled us deeper, and I gripped Leo's hand tightly as everything around us distorted and spun. We were trapped in a cosmic whirlwind, colors blending into an incoherent mess of light and shadow. Panic bubbled up within me, but I pushed it down. We had faced so much already. I couldn't let fear dictate my actions now. As the tumult began to quiet, I felt a sudden rush of resistance, as if the very fabric of this realm was fighting to preserve its mystery. Suddenly, the ground beneath us solidified into a rocky platform, and I stumbled, pulling Leo upright. We found ourselves standing in a bizarre landscape, a deep, dark valley surrounded by jagged cliffs and swirling mists that seemed to breathe. "Where are we?" Leo whispered, his voice barely escaping the weight of the silence. "I'm not sure," I replied, scanning the horizon, "but I think we're still at the mercy of those shadows." Before he could react, I spotted something, a shimmering outline of a figure crouched at the edge of the cliff. My heart raced. "Look over there." "Is that—" Leo took a hesitant step closer. The figure shifted, and I felt a surge of something, a rogue emotion, a connection that I couldn't define. "Don't approach it," I warned, but Leo was already moving toward it, as if he were under a spell. "Wait," I called, but he didn't turn back. The figure beckoned him closer, its outline flickering in and out of existence. A part of me screamed to grab him and pull him away. But what if it was a way to find answers? What if it could lead us back home? "Leo!" I shouted, again, desperate. When he reached the edge, the figure gestured toward the valley, and I saw it. A vast tapestry of luminous threads weaving through the darkness, like strings connecting lives, worlds, and energies untold. "Do you see that?" Leo whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. "Yeah," I agreed, my heart thumping. "But we have to be careful. We don't know what's waiting down there." "I can feel it calling to me," he said, almost entranced, "like it's part of everything we've experienced, part of us. Don't get too close." But as I stepped forward, the earth trembled beneath our feet. A crack split the rocky surface, and the valley echoed with an ominous rumble. "Look out!" Leo shouted as I tried to grab him, but I slipped, stumbling backward. The ground gave way beneath us, and I felt myself falling into the chasm. "No!" I screamed, reaching for him as we slipped into the abyss. Everything went dark again, but this time it felt different. The echoes of the whispers transformed into a cacophony, a language, a twisted song that clawed at me, pulling apart my sense of self. Then, with a thunderous crash, we landed, rolled, and came to rest in a dim, open space, surrounded by flickering figures. They hovered just out of reach, shadowy remnants of something. I couldn't tell if they were broken souls or something more sinister entirely. "Leo!" I gasped, scrambling to my feet. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," he replied, looking around, his eyes wide with awe and fear. "We're not done yet, are we?" No. My heart sank with an unsettling certainty. But we need to find a way to navigate through this. The figures flickered, and with every step I took, the shadows began to coalesce into something, if not recognizable, at least familiar. Patterns of memory, moments from our mission. I could see fleeting glimpses of my crewmates, their faces distorted by anguish and longing. "Anna," Leo whispered, breathless, "this place is a graveyard of lost lives." "Or of lost knowledge," I added, afraid of what it might mean. A wave of recognition washed over me. We had awakened something beyond comprehension, a consciousness bound by the remnants of what had been, a force activated by our intrusion into this realm. Had we truly woken it, or had it merely been lying dormant, waiting for the right moment? "What if it wants us to listen?" Leo said hesitantly, glancing back toward the figures. "What if we can learn from them?" "We could also become part of them," I countered. "We need to hold on to our resolve." I took Leo's hand, pulling him back as the ground beneath us trembled again, signs of agitation. The whispers rose in intensity, echoing through the valley, urging us to embrace our fate. "Get ready," I whispered, feeling a bond of electricity weave between us. "We may need to fight our way out, or at the very least negotiate with whatever is controlling this place." But the truth bubbled in my mind, cold and unyielding. This wasn't just about escape. We were entangled in something larger, a universe threatening to unravel those who wandered too far. Leo squeezed my hand. "Whatever we face it together." With one last look at the swirling shadows and flickering whispers, I summoned every ounce of courage and stepped forward into the unknown, the echo of the orb still pulsing in my heart. Whatever awaited us, our fates were intertwined with the mysteries we hadn't yet uncovered. And deep down, I knew there were still questions left unanswered, like whether we would ever truly escape the shadow of our past.